My topic right now is meat, because I feel like meat is being vilified, and vilified in the dietary guidelines as well as vilified across the media. But let's talk about what type of meats you eat, as well as should we consume meat. So I was a vegetarian for 16 years and I ate no meat, but I did eat dairy and I ate eggs. I realized after 16 years that my health wasn't as good as it should be. So I started to slowly get back into eating meat. That was like back in the 70s and 80s. That was a long time ago. And there weren't many people doing that back then. And I did it because I had a bad piece of meat one day when I was about 14 and I said to my mum, I'm never going to eat meat again. But now I'm seeing the vilification of meat. And instead what I'm seeing is I'm seeing plant-based meats coming onto the table. You're seeing it in takeaway places, you're seeing it in gourmet places, you'll see it at the grocery store, and they're replacing chicken and red meats, and every type of red meat from lamb to beef to bison is all being replaced with these plant-based meats. I know they're good at it. I know that the food manufacturers and the chemical companies have got it down pat, because I've heard people say that it tastes amazing. But when you read the ingredients, you may not want to eat it, because many of the ingredients are not even food-based. They are chemical-based, and they could be synthetic biology, which I'll talk to you about in another video. But all of the foods are usually, or all of these meats have usually got some sort of plant protein. It could be soya, it could be a rice, it could be a pea. All of those proteins are used first as the bulking part. And then after that, there's the flavors and the colors and the acidity regulators and the binders and the starches and all the mouthfeel things. And one of the things that they put in there is something called legohemoglobin. So it's made by synthetic biology. And like I said, I'll talk to you about that in another video. But legohemoglobin is put in there so that you see that the flavor number one of meat, but you also see that bleeding factor. So for me, I'm a natural girl. I like my food that has been eaten for thousands of years, rather than a food that's made in a chemical laboratory. And I know we were hunter-gatherers, and I know we were herders, and I know we lived in the agricultural age, and that meat was always on the menu. And if it wasn't on the menu, it usually meant that it could have been the Hindus that we know of as the only culture that were vegetarians, but they still ate the produce of animals, such as the eggs and the dairy. So when I'm choosing meat, I'm very particular about the meat that I choose, and the chickens that I choose, and even the fish that I choose. I want to make sure that these foods are ethical. So I have a farm, the Changing Habits Farm. We breed cattle on the Changing Habits Farm. They live great lives, they live in communities, and these are the cattle that are grass-fed, they're not grain-fed, they have no drugs, nothing is given to them that can poison their meat. We also have chickens that give us our eggs. So I think it's really important to think about not only are you going to eat meat or not, but are you going to eat what kind of meat, what quality of meat? So test your butcher, ask your butcher. That would be the first thing I do. And if your butcher doesn't give you the answer, go to the next butcher. Ask around, find people who know a good butcher in town that might be able to help you. And if you are going to be vegetarian, then do it right. If you're going to be vegan, then do it with real food, but don't even think about those plant-based meats, because I can tell you that they're not healthy. There was some research put out about these plant-based meats, and it was put out by a company here in Australia. And they said that eating plant-based meats was a healthier version than eating meat. But when I read the study, I realized they were talking about processed meats, such as bacon or cold cuts or sausages with lots of fillers and additives and nitrates and nitrites and colors. But when they compared it to, say, red meat that had not been processed, then red meat was the healthier version than the plant-based meat. So the evidence is out there. We've been eating meat for a long time. Make sure that it's ethical. Make sure you know where it's coming from. And eating meat, to me, you don't need it in large amounts. You can have plants with it, but eating meat is part of our heritage, and it's part of our cultures and traditions. There is not one culture on the planet that I know of that ever survived on a vegan diet, but many survived on meat diets. In actual fact, I went to Namibia, I followed the Himbas and saw how they ate. They were herders. They mainly ate the dairy of the meat, but they would also slaughter the meat and they would hunt meat in order to make sure that they could survive, because there were no plants available to them in the sandy deserts. So it's something to think about. Oh, one more thing I didn't talk to you about was the study about cancer and red meat. It's a flawed study, and if it did cause cancer, and that is the meat that I'm talking about, the ethical red meat that I'm talking about, if it did cause cancer, then we would have died off many, many years ago. So when you see, I guess, headings like that, I really want you to think about two things. Historical perspective, did we eat meat throughout evolution? And how can I eat meat in its most ethical form? All right, I'll see you in the next video.